Hi dear friends, this is Elena. Today we'll have a very important lesson, the tips from which, if applied, can guarantee durability and best results of any painting project. I chose the painting process as a visual aid for this video to help you focus and understand all the 7 tips. Let's begin. So the first fundamental advice that I'd like to start with is to forget about using fine art acrylics when working with textiles. Regular acrylic paints, as explained in previous lessons of this course, can be used in many other projects with decorative purpose, but they are not fit for soft fabrics and even for heavy denim if you are planning to wear and wash it. Cloth or any textiles painted with fabric paint remain soft and pleasant to touch. Some fabric paints even allow stretching of textile without causing the design any cracks. Price-wise, both types of paint are similar, so please choose the dedicated paint for fabric. The second point is one of the crucial ones, and is a big don't. Do not mix regular acrylics with fabric paints or blend different brands of fabric paint with each other. Most of the time, the destiny of such painted designs will be tragical. I've heard many times the same question like, for example, could the base coat be done with a white paint from regular acrylics and then they'd be painting the rest with fabric paints? The answer is no. You want to know what's gonna happen? The layers of fabric paint will wash off already after first rounds of laundry. And I'd like you to learn why it is this way, because if we understand our tools, their strengths and weaknesses, then we're able to get the best out of their performance and avoid rookie mistakes. So, fabric paints are durable and wash resistant because they have special components, which when heat set, in a way melt down into textile fibers and create a lasting bond with it. That's why if we were to layer fabric paint on a textile surface primed with regular acrylic paint, these two won't have a chance to properly bind the way fabric paint does when applied directly to a piece of cloth. The same rule is good for mixing up different fabric paint brands, because each manufacturer has its own technology and paint recipe. Here, however, one could do some experiments, but on my own experience, different paint brands still perform poorly in the long run if mixed or layered on top of each other. Now that I've mentioned layers, here's the third piece of advice. Let every layer of paint to dry completely before applying the next one. This one I've learned the hard way and want to share it with you because it's tricky and it's very tempting to ignore it. Simply leave your work for 1 to 1.5 hours to dry before layering more paint on it. To speed things up, it's totally fine to use hairdryer. See, now I know that while in the process it seems that painting goes so smooth and all colors are bright at once, and it's so cool to do some pasty brush strokes sometimes. But here's what's wrong with it. First layer of paint is always gonna get absorbed into fibers, and in a half hour you'll be noticing that the design is no longer that vivid. That's when you should stop and take a breather, or use a hairdryer. If you'll start layering the paint at once on top of the other one which is still wet, all this paint will keep going down, and as a result your design will become unnecessarily stiff due to excess of paint, and it might even crack or peel off. Now then, what's the optimal number of paint layers should there be, you might ask? The point number 4, if you do them right, do as less as possible. There is no certain number of how many paint layers we should apply, but there are some factors which might help you decide when it's enough. Think about this. Are you painting on light-colored or on a dark textile? Light-colored textiles are easy to work with. 1 or 2 layers are usually enough for painting to have a finished look. Dark textiles, on the other hand, can keep showing up from under the paint layer longer, hence will require 2 to 4 layers most of the time. The next question to ask yourself is whether you are using opaque paint or the transparent one. Paint with high covering ability is a perfect choice in order to achieve the solid color of design with minimum layers of paint application. And as a result, the less paint, the softer your fabric remains. Another factor which is also important to consider is that painting style also matters. If you're color blocking an area and need a uniformly covered surface, then you'll have to give it more paint layers as well. Moving on to the 5th important thing to remember when working with fabric paints. Most paints are created with a specific texture, which is intended to be applied straight to the fabric, without having to dilute them with water. Just dip the brush in paint and start drawing. Even if you think that some paints are too thick in a weird way, like for example Javana Opaque, it still doesn't need any water to be added in order to achieve the best result from this paint. If you will dilute it though, it will become transparent and won't perform well on dark textiles. On the other hand, there are also times when we could intentionally turn an opaque paint into transparent one, to use it on light color fabrics, or to work in a wet acrylic technique which resembles watercolor paint application. The 6th advice to keep in mind is importance of checking your paint's expiration date and close paint jars tightly to avoid untimely drying. This one seems obvious, but tell me, who really looks at expiry date on the jar before buying it? Let's count hands in the comments. It actually is an important point, because if you'll stick to the previous suggestion to use paint straight from the jar, but your paint will be in fact already not fresh and significantly thicker than it's supposed to be, the application will be difficult. And if paint is really gone bad without you noticing, it might even crumble and crack once your painted design is dry. That's happened to me when I thought I bought a new jar of fabric paint, but it went off like a caked powder after the first wash. And the last one on this list, the 7th point to never skip, is heat fixing of completed painting to ensure its bond with fabric and longevity. I could not enhance enough that this step is unavoidable. It's like in a food recipe. If you're making a soup, do not forget to boil the ingredients. Fabric paint does wash off if it's not heat fixed. Okay, so we simply should follow the instructions and iron our masterpiece through the cotton sheet for a few minutes and let it rest. Fabric paint on leather goods could be carefully heat fixed with a hair dryer while constantly moving it above the painted surface. That's it. I know it could be a lot to take, as some things like drying each paint layer or checking expiry dates are rather dull things to do. However, these are the little details which actually turn an amateur drawing on textile into a long-lasting and skillful fabric art. I bet you'd like to get to the second one. That's why, to help you remember the gist, there's a lecture note already waiting for you in the course section through the link. Share your thoughts and experience about the 7 things we've discussed today with other active learners on the Fabric Painting Forum. I also encourage you to join this free Fabric Painting Foundations course, participate in projects, and earn pretty badges for successful students. Thanks for today. I'll see you soon.